It was a bitterly cold January night, and the wind howled like a warning across the countryside. Rhea was nestled in the passenger seat of Samir's SUV, watching the endless road ahead dissolve into thick fog. Behind her, Priya sat curled up with a blanket, her unease palpable despite the car's warm interior. The three of them were on their way home after an impromptu road trip to a secluded hill station. Tired but satisfied, they had decided to take the fastest route back to the city. Samir's GPS insisted that the Bluewood Motorway would cut their travel time by half, even though none of them had ever heard of it before. "This doesn't feel right," Priya muttered, breaking the silence. "Why is there no traffic? It's like no one uses this road." "It's late," Samir replied, his tone dismissive. "We're probably the only ones stupid enough to be driving at this hour." Rhea glanced at him. "Still, don't you think it's odd? No signboards, no other cars, not even streetlights. This road looks ancient." Samir tightened his grip on the wheel but said nothing. The trees that lined the road loomed tall and skeletal, their bare branches clawing at the fog like they wanted to tear it apart. The farther they drove, the more the world around them seemed to lose its sense of reality. The air grew colder, and the sound of the engine felt distant, as if muffled by an unseen force. "Guys, maybe we should turn back," Priya suggested nervously. "We're halfway through," Samir argued. "Turning back now would waste more time. Let's just get through this stretch." Rhea didn't respond. Her unease had blossomed into a knot of dread that refused to go away. About 30 minutes later, the fog thickened impossibly, swallowing the headlights entirely. Samir slowed the car to a crawl, his knuckles white against the wheel. And then it happened. A sound, faint but unmistakable, cut through the oppressive silence. A low, mournful wail that seemed to echo from all around them. "What was that?" Priya whispered, clutching the edge of her seat. Samir shook his head. "Probably the wind." "No, it sounded like someone crying," Rhea said. She peered into the fog but saw nothing. The sound came again, louder this time, closer. It was a woman's cry filled with sorrow and pain. "Stop the car," Rhea said urgently. "Why?" Samir asked, his voice tight. "Just stop." Reluctantly, Samir pulled over. The wailing ceased instantly, replaced by a deathly silence. "I don't like this," Priya said, her voice trembling. Rhea scanned the road ahead and the trees on either side. Her pulse quickened. "Samir, let's get out of here." He nodded and put the car in gear, but before he could accelerate, the vehicle jolted violently, as though they'd run over something. "What the hell was that?" Samir exclaimed. "I don't know," Rhea said, her heart pounding. Samir opened the door. "Don't go out there," Priya cried. "I need to check," Samir said. "What if it's a person?" He stepped into the fog and disappeared. Minutes passed and Samir didn't return. The dread in the car thickened like the fog outside. "Samir?" Rhea called out, leaning out of the passenger door. There was no response. "I'm calling him," Priya said, grabbing her phone, but the screen showed no service. Rhea unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm going after him." "No, don't leave me alone," Priya pleaded. "I won't go far," Rhea promised, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. Stepping out into the cold, she immediately felt the suffocating weight of the fog. It seemed to press against her skin, muffling every sound. She called Samir's name, her voice barely audible even to herself. Then she saw it, a shadow moving just ahead. "Samir?" she called out, stepping closer. The figure emerged from the fog. It wasn't Samir. It was a woman, her long black hair hanging over her face. Her tattered dress swayed in an invisible breeze, and her arms dangled limply at her sides. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Rhea asked, her voice shaking. The woman lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were hollow, dark voids that seemed to suck in the light. Her lips curled into a smile, wide and unnatural. Rhea froze. The woman's lips moved, forming words Rhea couldn't understand. Then she lunged. Rhea screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over something solid. She looked down and saw Samir's body. His face was frozen in terror, his eyes wide open. The car horn blared, snapping Rhea out of her shock. She scrambled to her feet and ran back to the vehicle, tears streaming down her face. "Drive!" she shouted as she jumped into the car. Priya didn't need to be told twice. She floored the accelerator and the SUV surged forward. The road twisted and turned, and the fog seemed alive, shifting to block their view. The woman appeared again, standing in the middle of the road, her twisted smile widening. "Don't stop!" Rhea screamed. Priya shut her eyes and kept driving. The car passed through the woman as though she wasn't there. When the fog finally lifted, they found themselves on an ordinary stretch of road. The skeletal trees were gone, replaced by open fields bathed in moonlight. They didn't stop until they reached the nearest town. At the police station, they recounted their ordeal to skeptical officers. "Bluewood Motorway?" one of them said, frowning. "That road's been closed for decades. Too many accidents. Too many disappearances." When the police investigated, they found nothing. No signs of Samir, no traces of the woman, and no indication the road had been traveled in years. Rhea and Priya were left with a haunting memory they could never escape. The cry in the fog, the hollow eyes of the woman, and the cursed road that took Samir and nearly claimed them too. The end.